Hey guys, welcome to another video about sentences and grammar using a common guide to grammar and usage. Let's get started. This one's going to deal with run-ons, specifically fused sentences and comma splices. So the goals, by the end of this video, you should be able really to do three big things. Define what a run-on sentence is, what a fused sentence is, and what a comma splice is. You should be able to identify those run-on sentences, specifically by using the yes-no test or a tag question test. And then you should be able to correct a run-on sentence by using one of the four ways listed here. So you can use a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb and a comma and a conjunction, or by making two separate sentences. So those are the three big things by the end of the video. Why we need to know this? So similar to the fragment video, run-ons are another common error in academic writing that I see. Similar to fragments, run-ons detract from your credibility as an academic author, and run-ons can confuse the reader, which makes it harder for you to achieve your goal in writing. If the goal of writing is for you to get your message across, run-ons make it more difficult for your message to get across because it can confuse the readers. So some definitions. A run-on sentence contains two independent clauses that have been joined together as a single sentence without the correct punctuation. And so we know from previous discussions that an independent clause means we've got a subject, we've got a verb, and it's a complete thought. So anytime you have two independent clauses, but you join them without the correct punctuation, you've got a run-on. So if you look at these two examples, I have a test on Tuesday, it should not be difficult. We've got one independent clause here, one independent clause here, but they're joined together without any punctuation. So this is a fused sentence. If you look at the next one, the student government election is this week, comma, I have no idea who is running. Again, we have an independent clause right here, we have an independent clause right here, but a comma by itself is not enough to join two independent clauses. This one is a comma splice. This is the most common run-on sentence I see. So when two independent clauses are joined with no punctuation, it's a fused sentence. That's our example up here. There's no punctuation here in the middle. When two independent clauses are joined with only a comma, it's a comma splice. That's this example right here. And again, this is the one I see most often. Two independent clauses with just a comma. So identifying run-ons. Fixing run-ons is pretty easy once you see them, but you need to know how to find them. If you're not sure, there's two basic ways for testing your sentences. The first one is to turn your sentence into a yes-no question. The second one is to turn your sentence into a tag question. A tag question is just a sentence that ends with a questioning phrase at the very end. These are two things that nearly everyone can do pretty easily if the sentence is not a run-on, but they become next to impossible if it is a run-on. That's why they're such a good test. So if we look at our first original sentence right here, my favorite spread is hummus. If our first test is to turn it into a yes-no question, is my favorite spread hummus? That makes perfect sense. It's really easy to turn this sentence into a yes-no question. The tag question, my favorite spread is hummus, isn't it? Again, makes perfect sense. So we know that this question is fine. It is an independent clause. It's not a run-on. There's one single independent clause there. But if we look at our next sentence down here, my favorite spread is hummus, it is garlicky. If we do the yes-no question, so if we look right here, is my favorite spread hummus, is it garlicky? You can see there, we had to ask two questions. One, is my favorite spread hummus? Two, is it garlicky? So that tells me there's two independent clauses there. But here, it's written as a single independent clause. So that means I've got a run-on right here. If I tried to put them both into the same question, is my favorite spread hummus, is it very garlicky? That doesn't make sense. It gets a little confusing. So there's my big clue that I've got a run-on. If you do it with a tag question, my favorite Mediterranean spread is hummus, isn't it? It's very, very garlicky, isn't it? Again, I've got one idea, two ideas. If I have two ideas, I know I have two independent clauses. It's not this. My favorite Mediterranean spread is hummus, it is very garlicky, isn't it? That doesn't really make sense. So that again tells us there's a run-on. So if we look at these examples and we use that test, we can see if they're run-ons or not. So if we look at our first one, I went to the store, it was closed. If you make it a yes-no question, did I go to the store? That takes care of this first idea. Was it closed? That's this second idea. So I have two ideas. If I have two ideas, I need something right here, punctuation-wise. So I know that this is a fused sentence. It's a run-on. Because I tried my yes-no question test right here, realized I had two ideas there. If I look at the next example, I go to school on the West Coast. My family lives on the East Coast. If we did a tag question, I go to school on the West Coast, don't I? My family lives on the East Coast, don't they? Again, two ideas. I need two sentences. A comma by itself is not enough. Last example, the one person who thought I should go to the West Coast was my aunt. She said I should go to the best school for me. Make it a yes-no question. Was there a person who thought I should go to the West Coast? So if I do yes-no, I'll see I have one idea, two idea. Again, here's my one idea. Was there a person who thought I should go to the West Coast? Did she say I should go to the best school for me? Two ideas, but there's no punctuation. So we know, again, this is a run-on. So that's how those tests work. You can either turn them into the yes-no question, or you can use a tag question. But if you're not sure if a sentence is a run-on or not, that's how you test it. Try turning it into a yes-no question or a tag question. And the reason we do that is so then we can start worrying about how to fix them. And there's 4 basic ways to fix them. The first way is to use a semicolon by itself. An important note here though, a semicolon by itself only works if the two ideas are related. So if we look at our original sentence right here at the top, Carmen loved traveling in Italy, comma, she felt Rome was too hot. This is a comma splice. And if you're not sure, you can do the yes-no question or the tag question. Did Carmen love traveling in Italy? There's one idea. Did she feel Rome was too hot? There's 2 ideas. 2 ideas, 2 sentences, a comma is not enough. The fix, very simply, you replace that comma with a semicolon. But again, this only works if the 2 ideas are related. You cannot have a sentence like this one down here at the bottom. Christine loves hot chocolate. I am watching TV. This is an independent clause. This is an independent clause. But this semicolon doesn't work because what I am doing is not related to what Christine loves. So if you're going to use a semicolon, to fix a comma splice, the ideas have to be related. Another way to correct a run-on, still using a semicolon, but then you also use what's called a conjunctive adverb. And here's a list of some of the more common conjunctive adverbs right here. So you can see this first sentence, the original, I slipped on the ice at work, I wrenched my knee. So we've got a fused sentence here. Again, if you use the yes-no test, did I slip on the ice at work? Did I wrench my knee? One idea, two ideas. So I can fix it by adding a semicolon, a conjunctive adverb, and a comma. So essentially, when you're fixing these sentences, you're saying an independent clause, semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma, independent clause. And then the conjunctive adverbs are right here. The really common conjunctive adverb is going to be however. If you're using however, you can use a semicolon and a comma. Therefore is another one, common one. So if we look at our second example, the math homework is getting pretty hard, comma, I am thinking about getting a tutor. Again, if we use our tests, the math homework is getting pretty hard, isn't it? I'm thinking about getting a tutor, aren't I? One idea, two idea. A comma by itself is not enough. This is a comma splice. But we can fix it by using a semicolon, conjunctive adverb, comma. The math homework is getting pretty hard, semicolon, therefore, comma, I am thinking about getting a math tutor. And now it's fixed. Another way to fix run-ons, the one most students are most familiar with and do naturally, a comma and a coordinating conjunction, one of those fanboys. We've got the fanboys right here. These are called coordinating conjunctions. Sometimes you'll see textbooks call them this. So if we look at our examples, daylight saving time doesn't end until after Halloween, comma, the kids don't have to go out in the dark. We've got a comma splice. We can fix it with the comma and the word so, our fanboy right here. Daylight savings time doesn't end until after Halloween, comma, so the kids don't have to go out in the dark. It's important to remember the comma has to go in front of the coordinating conjunction. Second example, we're taking out the counter, we are putting in a granite one. Again, we've got a comma splice right here. We fix it, comma, coordinating conjunction. We are taking out the counter, comma, and we are putting in a granite one. Now it's fixed. Hopefully what you're noticing, a comma by itself cannot join sentences. It's not strong enough. Commas are kind of weak things. So if you're going to use a comma, there's always going to have to be something else with it, either a coordinating conjunction or a conjunctive adverb. But a comma by itself cannot join sentences. And remember, independent clauses are sentences. So another way of saying this is a comma by itself cannot join independent clauses. We've got an independent clause here. We've got an independent clause here. Comma by itself, not strong enough. Commas are weak little things. The last way to fix a run-on, you just make them two sentences. So if you already have two independent clauses, you just make that comma a period. So parking at my school has always been tricky, comma, this year is even worse. I've got an independent clause here, an independent clause here. Independent clause equals a simple sentence, equals a simple sentence. Well, if it's a sentence, I can just make my comma a period. Same thing right here. There are always more students, there's never any more parking. There are always more students, period. There's never any more parking, period. So that's the final way. So what we've covered. We've defined run-on sentence, fused sentence, and a comma splice. Remember, a run-on sentence is anytime you have more than one sentence joined together without the proper punctuation. A fused sentence, you're just joining them together with no punctuation at all. A comma splice, you're joining them together with just a comma. Remember, a comma is too weak to join sentences. We've talked about how to identify run-on sentences, specifically how to use a yes-no question or a tag question to determine if a sentence is a run-on. And then we talked about the 4 ways to correct a run-on. You can use a semicolon if the ideas are closely related. You can use a semicolon, a conjunctive adverb, and a comma, words like however, therefore, moreover. You can use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Those are your fanboys. Or you could just make each clause its own sentence, basically putting a period between them. So that's the deal with run-ons. Again, this is important because this is an error I see a lot. It's also an error that detracts from your credibility as an academic author and distracts the reader from your true meaning. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me. Thanks, guys.